Hey YouTube, I'm back with another amazing interview with another amazing Black certified financial planner. Today I am interviewing Rhonda Potter, CFP. First and foremost, thank you so much for doing this interview. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled that you have this platform, so I'm honored to be here today. Thank you.
All right. Listen, people hit me up all the time. They're so interested in the field of financial planning and becoming a financial planner. So I want to hear your story because obviously, as talented as you are, you could have done anything with your life, but you chose to become a CFP. So, first off, who are you and where do you come from?
My name is Rhonda Potter. I am a Yankee, right? So born in Baltimore, I am. You got to tell everybody from the South Side. Like, let's start with with who I'm not, right?
uh,
So true Yankee, born in Baltimore, raised in Detroit. I live in Atlanta now.
mhm.
And I ended up here because I went to Spelman and got
Okay.
sucked in by the Southern weather.
Mhm. Nice, nice, nice. Okay, why Spelman? I mean, obviously, we're very aware that on the past 20 something years, 30 years, whatever, however long it is, when it comes to the list of the top HBCU, Spelman has been number one. But other than that, why Spelman?
Let me also go out and point out that Spelman is also one of the highest ranked schools on the U.S. News and World Report
Mhm.
colleges list. So not only are we the finest HBCU, we are one of the finest colleges in the country. I just don't
Right.
want to let
Oh,
that
of course. Yes, yes.
So, my parents made a terrible mistake that your financial planners will not have you make, and they did the
Mhm.
prepaid tuition plan at the University of Michigan when I grew up. They did not do a 529. They prepaid Michigan's tuition,
Mm,
right?
okay.
So I toured a couple schools. I toured Michigan. I toured Spelman. I went to Michigan. The only thing they talked about was theater troops, excuse me, and white
Mhm.
Greek organizations, neither of which I was prepared to join. And
Right.
so Michigan, while a fantastic school, I can't say enough good things about the University of Michigan, was not for me. I went
Mhm.
to Spelman and it felt a lot like home. Spelman really rolls out the red carpet, not just for incoming students, but for existing students. And it felt right for me as soon as I showed up.
Gotcha. Okay, so while at Spelman, what did you ultimately decide to major in?
I was English political science. My mother
Brilliant.
is an attorney, and Spelman is a liberal arts school. So,
Okay.
for folks who are very interested in the more practical professions, so finance,
Mhm.
business, business building, not the
Mhm.
theoretics behind it. So
Right.
liberal arts colleges are not typically where you end up. So my mom was an attorney and my aunt was an attorney. My mother went to law school while I was a child. So I was raised around the law. I was very comfortable with the effort that it took to go to law school. I wanted to be a judge. I love telling people what to do, which is part of the reason I do what I do now.
Right, right.
And so I went to law school and I hated law school. It was not for me. It wasn't the
Mhm.
workload, which certainly is challenging. I have a great respect for the law.
Mhm.
But I found it boring personally. And I just could
Gotcha.
not commit that sort of intellectual or personal talent to a field that I did not find interesting.
That okay, so that no, the story's getting good now. Okay, so was in law school.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it was not for you. What was
Mhm.
your next step?
I was broke and I'm my only child. And my parents, who love me to death, were like, "We're so happy that you're going to law school like your mom, and we're happy to help you however we can. But when you're not in law school,
Mhm.
that's fine, but you're going to have to figure it out. You're going to figure it out fast."
Okay.
And so I had zero prospects because I was only prepared to go to graduate school. And so I needed to
Mm.
find a job.
Mhm.
And I went to temp agencies, I went to recruiters, and I was placed at a couple of places that did not make sense for me. And finally, I ended up as, let's call it 3 months, 4 months after graduation, had a cute internship somewhere.
Mhm.
I ended up at BNY Mellon Wealth Management,
Ah, okay.
their receptionist was going on vacation to Hawaii for a month.
Mhm.
And they needed all they needed was a warm body. Like, can you breathe and can you make coffee? And I was like,
Right.
yeah, I can do both of those. And so I sat in the seat and she came back because she had to come back from vacation.
Right.
Um, but she was a very vacationing receptionist. And so 2 weeks later, she shipped off to Australia And I sat there a little bit longer.
Uh-huh.
And by that point, those of us who are accustomed to, I've always been a strong relationship builder.
Mhm.
And so that part of this skill set came very naturally to me. And so while I was at BNY Mellon, that's what I did. I formed relationships with people who I knew were in a position to advance my really paycheck in the world. I love to be elegant and say something about how I always had a love for money. I didn't always have a love for money. I grew up not knowing anything about money. I grew up in one of those families where I'm like, how come some kids get free lunch and how come some kids don't? And my parents said, you be quiet and go to school, and your job is to do well at school. You don't worry about who is and who isn't getting free lunch. Okay.
Right.
And I just did not grow up in a culture where money
Mhm.
was it just wasn't part of the educational component that I grew up in. I
Mhm.
grew up very firmly middle class. I never had to worry about money, but that's how I grew up. I never had to worry about money, where the
Gotcha.
reality is that most Americans, regardless of professional accomplishment or
Mhm.
economic scale, do in fact have to think about money.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was
Mhm.
there. I built the relationships. The receptionist came back. No one wanted to see me leave. I didn't want to see me leave. And so I hung around there doing
Uh-huh.
complete odd jobs at this high net worth wealth management shop. I mean, I did everything. I ordered cakes. I made books. I learned about 401k rollovers into IRAs. I just did anything no one else wanted to do. I
Mhm.
was thrilled to do, right? Because I was there task building. I really didn't have any huge responsibilities. All I had to do was learn and have fun. And
Right.
at the end of 4 months, a job opened up on their business development side. This was an organization where sales and service were split. So
Okay.
some folks really found the very wealthy, and other folks managed the very wealthy.
Got you.
And the job opened up servicing,
Mhm.
like supporting the sales folks in their sales efforts. So opening accounts, transferring assets, learning about cost basis.
Mhm.
And I accepted the position. They were paying me $35,000 a year. And you
Mhm.
could not tell my boyfriend and I that we were not full millionaires. Like, I called him from the conference room. I said, we have made it.
We're
These
we on,
people
we're here.
these people gonna pay us $35,000. We got it. We're in here. And so to make a long story short, I
Uh-huh.
had a great time in sales. And then there were these other folks on the other side of the business
Mhm.
who were always in a bad mood. Like, they were just always irritated. They were like, yeah, they were sort of people, they were largely women who walked past your desk and everyone
Mhm.
like wanted to look like they were working, right? Like, and
Alright.
then they keep going, and the sales guys would kind of laugh, like, look, they're having no fun at all. We're having the best time in their lives. And I went to my manager and said, I think I want to be a portfolio manager. And he was
Mm.
like, you're crazy. Like,
Right.
they're not having any fun at all. This is what you want to do. I was like, yeah, I think I want to be in a bad mood too. And so, these women, as angry and irritated as the salespeople as they were,
Right.
you took one look at them and you said, these are intellectual titans. Like, these are just not women to be taken lightly. And I had a
Mhm.
great respect for them and a great admiration for them. And again, to sort of keep it short, I looked up a decade later, those really smart, really angry women had made a very personal investment in my career. I'd gotten my CFA, I'd gotten my CFP, and I was managing $500 million in assets.
Oh my god. Okay, so I'm sorry. We're gonna have to take a couple of steps back because those
What do
two
you mean? I was a
accomplishments.
receptionist and then I was managing $500 million. What do you
Well,
mean?
okay, right. Step one, step two, just quick. All right. So obviously there was a lot of work to be done to get those two sets of three letters. You're talking about CFA and CFP. They're not easy to get. So first off, what made you, really take the step and say, I want to be at the highest level of this thing to go on and become a CFA and a CFP? And I want to hear about the challenges of
Mhm.
actually accomplishing those goals. So what was it? I mean, obviously you had these other mentors. Were they the influence to say, hey, I want to be at the highest level?
Not for CFP.
Mhm.
So at CFP, I got my CFP first.
Okay.
Because I was an English political science major, I had no clue what I was doing at this
Mhm.
bank. And I can remember so clearly, I was sitting next to another sales assistant one day, very, very early in my career. he mentioned something about, did you update the cost basis? Because I'm old, y'all. So this is a point in time where like people who didn't know what they were doing had to like manually type cost basis into a system.
Right.
And so I was like, no, I haven't been updating the cost basis. What is cost basis? Like now I have been sitting here for like 6 months. So I shudder to think how many accounts had not in fact had cost basis updated by that time. Like, have portfolio managers been trading on my terrible work? Like, is that? And so I realized, like, I do not have the education that I need to even be at the baseline of this organization. And I did like the organization. I absolutely love the work. I had an uncle early on who told me, I think you'd be really, really great in investments. But anyone who's not in money has no idea what people who are in money do. So he didn't know what he was talking about, but he did happen to be right. And that he is why I accepted the receptionist position, even though beyond the fact that I needed income.
Right.
And so that interaction, and my coworker was not the friendliest guy. So he just kind of looked at me like, no one told this idiot about cost basis, and no one had. And so I was like, I got to figure this out. And so I went and I got my CFP, and I found the CFP incredibly challenging. I found it's not fair to say that it's harder than the CFA, but it is an entirely different set of skills.
Right.
And
yeah.
I took it when I was very young. And you know, Jayson, that when you test for CFP, they use a lot of real world examples.
Yes.
Right. They say things like, oh, just look at your 1040. I'm like, what? I have a 1040 EZ that my dad files for me. Like, they're like, look at the interest you pay on your car. My dad, I don't have a car note. Like, they'll say things like, think about what you pay your household employees. I'm renting an apartment.
Right.
Like, I'm just not, you know what I mean?
Right,
so I found CFP more intellectually demanding because I did not have the background. I think that it really takes to understand the pieces of how things work together. Over the course of my career, and they're also used in very different ways. So, and we'll talk, I'm sure, about my role later, but I work with people and I work with institutions, right? So I work with individuals and I work with select nonprofits, some businesses.
Right.
The CFP is far more useful in the personality work that I'm required to do with clients, right? And so while I found it very challenging, I also find the payoff to be more beneficial for clients than perhaps my CFA is, in a way that my clients can feel a little easier.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, because it really, it made a huge difference, you know, while I was studying for it. At every moment, I was like, this is useful. Even if it was a complex concept of me working through, I was like, this is still so relevant that within like later that week, I'm talking to a client and I'm just spitting this thing out that I learned maybe a couple of days ago because it was extremely relevant to it. I was like, oh, that would help this person. That would help that person. It is something that kept me engaged, even though some of the concepts were hard. I was like, it kept me engaged because I knew there was some payoffs. Like, because before I decided to study for the CFP, I was studying for the CPA exam. Right. And there was so much within the CPA exam that had no relevance whatsoever of what my practice and thing was. Like, if you get down to trying to work out the balance sheet of a company that deals in raw material, and you have to try to figure out the difference between, okay, you started out with this much raw material, and then you have this much in finished goods, but then you have partially finished. I was like, this means nothing to me. I will never use this ever. I can't take it. I never felt like that in one moment studying for the CFP, but it goes to show just the type of financial professional that I was. It just made the most sense. So no, it makes complete sense. Yes,
the CFP is an extremely practical designation. I don't even care if you don't manage other people's money.
Yeah.
Right. Like, understanding how, I mean, both of us can sit down right now and figure out how much we'll need for tuition. My children are very young, in 13 years when they need it. Right. I mean, it's very, very, very practical. The CFA, I knew I needed to get it because I was also an old school portfolio manager. So like staring at screens, trying to figure out if I should buy Lowe's or Home Depot and looking at the debt of each company. Like, and I learned that because those smart, angry women were that way, right? Like they were managing portfolios long before, we had the amount of data, which I know my assistants hate it. Like, I'm still a very DIY. Like I know what the bank told you, but you have a brain. You should look and, quantitatively assess the bank's data. But anyway, I knew I needed to get the CFA. All these smart women had the CFA. So I knew it was just a matter of time, but I was kind of dragging my feet. And so it was my mentors who were kind of like, just do it. And I mean, I wasn't really dragging my feet. I was maybe 25 years old, but still, 26. But they were like, no, do it. Like now, like there's no point in waiting. And they were 100% right that there was no point in waiting, right? Because the CFA is far more demanding from a time perspective and from an intellectual capacity perspective, because the CFP introduces new concepts into concepts that you're very familiar with, right? You know that someone has to pay taxes. Okay, well, this is how taxes actually impact the taxpayer. You know that somebody is making money in the stock market. Here's what the stock market is. The CFA is like the CPA exam. It introduces brand new concepts for which there was no background, right? I remember so clearly studying for level 2. And I might even pronounce it wrong. There's a CFA concept called heteroscedasticity. Why? Why does that even exist? And I'll never forget it because I took a picture of my level 2 book that day and was like, CFA has finally lost it. Like they're finally just making up words and saying, go for it.
Right.
So the challenge with CFA, I find, and this is why I say they were right to tell me to do it when they did. CFA is more challenging the older you get and the more responsibilities you have. So the more serious your career is, the more serious your family commitments are, your volunteer commitments, the commitments you might have at church. CFA is demanding mentally. I mean, my family, and that at this point, it was just me, my husband, and my 2 brother-in-laws. My family ate chicken wings for like 3 straight years, like because I did not have the time or capacity to cook. It demands every bit of you that is not consumed by your job or whatever your primary function is. And that's what I would say and the other thing that I think is hard for CFA is that there's a very fatalist approach to it. And I think that's true for CFP too. It's just that everyone knows these exams are hard. And so people go into it like, gosh, this is so hard. It is hard, but people who are dumber than you have passed these exams. So
that's what I kept telling myself. I can't tell myself, hey, listen. As hard as this is right now, you are much smarter than some of the people who have passed this exam. You can do it. Just keep going. Okay, so obviously, huge hurdles to be able to jump over that CFP hurdle, that CFA hurdle. So now you're here. Got these, 2 very prestigious credentials behind your name. Let's talk about your practice. I mean, what is that work life like?
So I am a banker at JP Morgan's private bank. JP Morgan Chase is the United States' largest bank. And I work in our private bank, which means that I work with clients who have a minimum net worth of $5 million or above. And I also work, as I mentioned earlier, with select institutions, nonprofits, endowments, hospitals, schools. The mentor of mine, who was the largest influence, grew up as an institutional investment consultant. And so very early in this business, I got an early comfort with the use of alternatives in portfolios and early comfort with what it meant to RFP, to present to an investment board. And so quite naturally, the institutions piece of my business flowed in. So I'm a relationship manager. That's what a banker does. So Jayson mentioned balance sheets earlier. It is my responsibility to understand the entire ins and outs of a family or institution's balance sheet, what their financial goals are, and then I quarterback the situation to make sure all the pieces are filled in. All right. So typically I own the investment piece, but because my clients are so sophisticated, JP Morgan banks more hedge fund principals than S&P 500 CEOs, any other bank on the planet. Because my clients are so sophisticated, there are plenty of clients for whom I'm an investment sounding board because no one else wants to talk about it but me.
Right.
Or B, I'm doing something complementary to the cool thing they're doing on the side. Or C, I'm just their bank, right? So I advise across the balance sheet. I make sure that the CPA is plugged in, that the CFP is plugged in, that the insurance guy is plugged in, that the attorney and tax guy are plugged in. But my client is his own investment guy, and he only really looks to me for those other pieces. Lending, someone to hold the assets, and someone to be your kind of old school bank. So a day-to-day, my day-to-day looks very, very different. I prioritize the stewardship of client assets first. So my first look every day is to make sure that I don't have any outstanding client issues that need to be addressed on the money side, because the first job is be a good banker. Right. So let's just make sure you don't have any money issues that we need to solve. As an example, let's make sure we had a conversation 6 months ago about socially responsible investing. And now I see that there's a really great solution available. Is it time to make that switch from your traditional large cap portfolio to pivot towards something that's more in line with your goals? So you solve that stuff. And then I sort of move on to the soft stuff. Okay, so which one of my clients is interviewing insurance agents right now? How do I need to get them on the docket? Is this going to be Zoom? Is this going to be in person? I need to engage my analyst to provide lunch? What sort of strategies are we looking for? Are we looking for protection? Are we looking for estate planning? Are we looking for a different source of income during retirement because my client is getting skittish about what it looks like when he no longer has to work anymore? Am I meeting with an estate planning attorney for a client who has inherited assets, but who really doesn't want their kids to be spoiled and has to figure that out? So my job is equal parts money manager and investment manager, therapist, and financial quarterback. That's what I do.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So it makes it so your client is normally they're coming to you with these somewhat broad money questions and goals and all the different things, and you're able to translate what the thing that they're saying, because they don't really know what it is. They know that there's a solution somewhere to whatever money problem that they have, and they come to you, they drop that on you, and you have to translate what the heck they're talking about, and then find the solution. If the solution isn't obviously in-house, then you're able to find and outsource that solution for them and make sure that they're looking at the total picture of their whole financial life.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And I would argue that for me, I think so many people have questions about the stock market, right? And they should, because that's how generations of Americans preserve wealth. Right. But really, for my clients, the stock market is almost the easy part, right? Like I've been managing money since 2007, for 15 years. Getting the right asset allocation in place and getting the money doing what it's supposed to do is really the easy part. What's harder for my clients is exactly what you said, Jayson. I know that I want to buy a vacation house in 15 years, and I want to feel comfortable that we put the right plan in place for me to be able to achieve that. And not only that I have the right money to do it, but that I'm doing it in a way that's tax sensitive, that's tax efficient, and that I'm doing in a way that that's really smart. You would be surprised at how many of my clients are asking, tell me about what your other clients are doing, your most successful clients. Did they purchase the house in LLC? Do they rent it out? Is there a tax advantage way we can do this? And then what happens to the house when we pass away? Is this an asset that my kids even want? If they don't want it, how do we, monetize that asset for them once we're gone? It's the intangibles that we really sort of wrap our arms around. And that is what my clients pay me to have an expertise in. My clients very rarely come to me and say, here's what I want to do. They come to me and say, I think I want to do this. Talk to me about the smartest way to do this and really, really make it happen. For my clients, I'm the guy, right? I'm the guy. So, and your private banker touches every part of your life. People are shocked at the number of issues their private banker touches. They'll tell
Right.
me something totally random. And I'm like, you did what? Why didn't you call me?
Right.
I could have saved you 3% on this deal. Why didn't you call me first?
Right. Right.
And because I have the behemoth that
Uh-huh.
is Chase behind me,
Right.
a lot of the clients I meet are not necessary. Some are new to wealth, right? Some
Mhm.
are executives for whom it worked out,
Right.
or folks who had a really, really successful career in a business, right? So
Mhm.
some people are truly new to wealth, but many people are really new to a wealth management relationship.
Okay.
Right. And so they say, someone handed me a plan and this was my plan and it was my job to follow it. And at a private bank, we really take that onus off the client. Certainly you have responsibilities, communicate and don't overspend.
Right.
Right. But it's really my job, even unfortunately more than the clients, to really understand all the missing pieces. If an opportunity is missed, that
Right.
falls on me, not the client.
Got you. Got you. So it's like, okay, we have the plan, but obviously you're managing the relationship to make sure that the plan is actually being followed, and you
Yeah.
stay up to date on different things that may affect the plan, and say, hey, actually we need to go this way instead of that way, because clearly maybe your goals have changed, or the
Mhm.
environment that we live in, the way that tax laws change and banking
Mhm.
regulations and things change. You have to stay on top of that and provide those opportunities for the client, right?
Correct. So like a new two new clients had come to me and I just
Mhm.
met them. So they didn't know what it was like to work with a private banker.
Right.
And they didn't have a huge experience with wealth. Client came to me. We had a great vibe. About 3 months later, she said, I've had it. I filed for divorce. Wait a minute. I didn't even know
Whoa.
you were thinking about getting a divorce. And I wish you had told me this last month. Like there were things that we had
Could have
done.
did differently.
Yeah, we could have done this differently. Or I had another new client who said, hey, I just wanted to fire off the check for tuition. So I just did that. No, 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 no. You don't write any big checks that way. Tell me first.
Right, right, right.
First. Maybe I can save you some money. And so a lot of it is education. And yeah, it's my
Mm,
job to make sure that I know what Congress is doing. I had a meeting at 8 a.m. this morning on what's going to happen with the Fed on Wednesday.
right.
And it's my job between today and Wednesday to position portfolios in such a way that I think will take advantage of the news on Wednesday, that sort of thing.
Amazing, amazing. Okay, all right. So if you were to speak to a younger version of yourself, right, before the CFA, before the CFP, and you're talking to that young student at Spelman, what
Mhm.
would be your your advice to help them on their career, knowing that they want to kind of be where you are? What
Sure.
would you tell them?
That's such a good question, Jason. I would tell that person, I would tell me, and I would tell
Mhm,
anyone else sitting in that seat two pieces of advice, and that would be to believe in yourself
mhm,
and to be humble,
mm,
right? I missed a number of important opportunities, not early in my career because I largely learned the lesson by then, but particularly in school, like judging a book by its cover
okay.
as an example. And I think for me, that's an exercise in humility,
Mhm,
right? The belief that I know everything, right? And so I can, do a certain thing or act a certain way in a certain situation when the reality is that I don't know everything. Even
right.
today, right? I'm an expert, but today I have the confidence to say I don't know everything and I'm still an expert,
Got you.
right?
Right.
If I were talking to my younger self, I would tell her, it's okay not to know everything. Take a step back, have some humility about the situations that you're walking into. There's never a situation that I have gone into in my career where I didn't approach with, hey, there's an opportunity for me to learn something here that I wasn't the better for when all was said and done. I wasn't a better professional for. And then the second thing is to believe in myself, right? I wish that I had learned that lesson earlier. I don't think that I suffered from an obvious lack of confidence when I was in school,
Mhm,
right? But internally, I certainly had insecurities that I wish that I didn't have, right?
right.
Um, and so I just think the constant reinforcement, particularly for Black professionals, especially if they're in majority spaces,
Mhm,
is just to remember that you are 100% here for a purpose. You have the things that you need to succeed and to excel. And so if I was talking to any younger person who's entering this space, kind of like medicine, it can be a little bit intimidating.
Right.
Is that, I mean, you got this, right? You have everything you need to be a success in this space. If you didn't have the mind to be here, you wouldn't. And that's it.
No, that's so perfect, because it's that imposter syndrome. Like, even if you're in the space, you're always questioning yourself, do I really belong here? They're gonna find out that, I'm not really who I say I am, even though you've done all the things that you were supposed to do to get to where you are. Even if
Mhm.
you're a student, right? That young college
Mhm.
student in Spelman, you're there for a reason, right?
Mhm.
You didn't just get
Mhm.
plucked out of the sky. You're there for a
Mhm.
reason. You have purpose. Is just continue to stay focused, keep that humility. And as long as you are sticking to the plan and you're reaching out to other people to get the info that you don't have yet, you'll be successful, just like
Mhm.
this amazing CFP that just gave us so many gems. So thank you so much for doing this interview. Any information that you want to share with the audience, I'll put in the show notes, and they can
Perfect.
get in contact with you if they can. All right.
Thank you, Jayson. This was the best.